Okay, welcome to your sixth CSS3 tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be moving on to another module of the CSS3 specification, that is the backgrounds and borders module. And under that module, we will be covering the CSS border radius property today. Now, in the past, it was very difficult for a web developer to achieve a border radius, that is a rounded corner on a div element, using CSS, because the developer had to implement many hacks into his style to achieve that effect, including using images and so forth. Okay, however, CSS has made this very simple for the developer with the inclusion of this border radius property. So we will be looking at that property today. So let's go ahead and create a div element on the page right here. Let's give this div element an ID of box, and let's give this box CSS style, and let's say the width of the box will be 300 pixels. The height will be 300 pixels as well, and the border, let's give a background, background color, let's give it gray, and let's give it the border 2px, let's make it 3px, solid black. Control S to save this, and let's preview this. Okay, we have our div element here. Now before we continue, I need to explain how the border radius is actually measured. So let's pull up the paint program here, and let's explain this. So the border radius, let's say we have our element, right, the corner, and the corner has a curved corner. The border radius is measured on the XY axis as well. So on the X axis, a measurement is taken on the X axis, which is this measurement right here, and one is taken on the right axis, on the Y axis right here, and wherever these 2 points meet, the curve is drawn to connect these 2 points. This is how you achieve the border radius on an element. Now let's illustrate this on the div element right here. Okay, so we have our div element right here. Now, to simply achieve a border radius all the way around, we can simply put in the property right here, which would be border radius. Now this is the shorthand property. So if we put in a border radius, let's say 10 pixels. Control S to save, and let's preview this. As you can see here, all 4 corners of the element has a radius of 10 pixels. Okay, now the 10 pixels will be 10 pixels on the X right here, measured, and 10 pixels on the Y right here, measured, and the 2 points will be connected to draw the curve, the rounded corner. Okay, now if we put just 10 pixels, then each corner will be a default of 10 on the X and 10 on the Y. However, if we go ahead and we put in 30 pixels, watch what happens. Control S to save it. Let's preview in the browser. As you can see now, there the border radius, two of the corners, which is the top left hand corner right here and the bottom right hand corner, have both 10 pixels on X and 10 pixels on the right. However, the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner have 30 pixels on the X and 30 pixels on the Y as well. Now let's put in another value. Let's say 40 pixels, and watch what happens. Control S to save, and let's preview this. As you can see here, the top left hand corner of the element, right, it has 10 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on the Y. If we go over to the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner, they now have 30 pixels on the X and 30 pixels on the right. And if we go over to the bottom right hand corner, we have 40 pixels on the left and 40 pixels on the right. 40 pixels on the X, right, going across here, and 40 pixels on the Y going down here, and the point is joined together. Okay, now we could also move on to 60. Let's add another value to this. Let's say 60 pixels. Control S to save, and watch what happens. Now you can see that each corner has the individual rounded curve. So the top left hand corner has 10 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on the Y. The top right hand corner has 30 pixels on the X and 30 pixels on the Y. The bottom right hand corner has 40 pixels on the X and 40 pixels on the Y. And the bottom left hand corner has 60 pixels on the X and 60 pixels on the X and 60 pixels on the Y as well. Now what if we want irregular curves? We want each element to have irregular curves, right? So we want at least, let's say we want 10 on the Y here, and let's say we want 20 on the X to make this curve irregular. This is how we achieve this. Okay, so let's say we want let's say we put in 10 pixels. We use a slash to separate the values. So this will give an effect of 20 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on the X and 20 pixels on the Y for each corner of the element. Okay, so as we see here, each corner of the element has 10 pixels on the X and 20 pixels on the Y for each corner of the element. So if we put in 30 pixels here, watch what happens. Okay, as you can see here, now the element has 10 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on the Y for the top left hand corner, as well as 10 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on 10 pixels on the X and 10 pixels on and 20 pixels on the Y for the top left hand corner, right? And the bottom right hand corner as well, and 10 pixels on the X and 30 pixels on the Y for the top right hand corner, right, and the bottom left hand corner. Now as you can see, it's very irregular, right? So it's very irregular. It's very difficult to see the consistency with these values. Okay, now to make it even a little more complicated, let's say we want different irregular shapes for each one. So this is what we're gonna have to do. We could have to put something like this. We're gonna say we could say 5 pixels, 20 pixels, 40 pixels, right? And then we separate by a slash, and we could say 5 pixels, 5 pixels. Okay, and now watch what happens when we refresh this page. Okay, now as you can see here, the top left hand corner, right, it has 5 pixels on the X and 5 pixels on the Y, as 5 pixels on the X and 5 pixels on the Y. Now the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner now has 20 pixels on the X and 5 pixels on the Y. Okay, now the bottom right hand corner now has 40 pixels on the X and 5 pixels on the Y. Okay, so initially you can see it seems very difficult, but once you get the hang of it, you will be able to make sense of it. Now let's say we want to add border radius to individual corners instead of multiple corners. So Control S, let's put this back to how it was. Okay, now let's say we wanted to give a radius to the top left hand corner. Okay, so we could say border top left radius. We could say let's say 20 pixels. Control S to save, and let's preview this in the browser. So as you can see here, the top left radius has 20 pixels. We could say border top right radius. We could say border let's give this 30 pixels. Top right radius now has 30 pixels. If we want to add a radius to the two bottom corners, we could say border bottom right radius, and we could say 40 pixels. Okay, and Control S, let's preview this. As you can see here, it's 40 pixels to the bottom right here, and we could say bottom border left, border bottom left radius. We could say 50 pixels. Watch what happens when we refresh the page. As you can see here, this border bottom has 50 pixels. Now, even with this, we can add irregular shapes to individual corners. We can take each individual corner, add an irregular shape to each individual corner by simply specifying the y the y value. Okay, so for the top left radius, we could say 20 pixels on the x, and let's say 50 pixels on the y. As you can see here, it's an irregular shape of 20 pixels on the x, so 20 going over here, and 50 pixels going up, and the two corners are joined together to create that radius right here. Okay, and we could do the same thing for each one. Let's say 30, let's say 80 pixels. As you can see here, this is the shape. We could say 40, let's say 60 pixels. Control S, and we can see the shape right here, and we could say as well 50, let's say 100 pixels, and we can see the shape right here. So it could be, we can make this as irregular as we like with the border radius, as regular and as irregular as we like with the border radius property. Now this, I think this is supported by all major browsers. Let's take a look. Let's see. First of all, let's try it in Firefox. Okay, it works well in Firefox. Let's go over to Internet Explorer. Okay, it works well in Internet Explorer. Let's go over to Safari. Control S. Okay, it works well in Safari as well. And let's go over to Opera. And it works well in Opera as well. So as you can see, this works well in all major browsers. Now the exception is Internet Explorer. This is Internet Explorer 9. Okay, so it's going to work in Internet Explorer 9, but it's not going to work in Internet Explorer 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever. You know, it's not going to work in those previous browsers. But Internet Explorer 9, it works fine. Okay, so this is the border radius property. This is our 6th CSS3 tutorial. Okay, so thank you for watching this tutorial, and I do ensure that you subscribe and view further tutorials. Thank you.